Hello everyone and welcome. This is a 20-minute Sagittal training taster designed to help make ICH GCP E6 R3 or R3 for short work in practice, moving from guideline to action. My name's Phyllis Shepherd. I'm a GCP consultant with Sagittal Pharma. I have over 35 years of experience in conducting GCP audits and implementing holistic risk-based quality management systems. Over the years, I've seen firsthand how our industry has evolved and how clinical trial guidance needs to evolve with it. The previous version of ICH GCP E6, which was R2, was adopted back in 2016. And since then, the world of interventional clinical trials has changed dramatically. The COVID-19 pandemic showed us that clinical trials can continue, even under extreme conditions, through remote consent, virtual visits, and risk-based adaptations. That flexibility wasn't captured in R2, and since 2016, we've seen a rapid expansion in digital tools, electronic systems, and remote oversight, all of which require stronger governance to ensure data integrity and participant protection. R3 reflects this new reality. The R3 guideline encourages a risk-based and proportionate approach to the conduct of interventional clinical trials. So join me as I share in this training taster what has changed in R3, why it matters, and how you can start applying it in a way that's proportionate, risk-based, and fit for purpose for the clinical trials relevant to you, with a focus on what truly matters, which is protecting participants and ensuring high-quality, reliable data. If you work in interventional clinical trials, whether you're in QA or clinical operations or project management, or if you have a different role, whether you work in pharma, a service provider such as a vendor or CRO, or a site management organisation, whether you work in the academic setting, Sagittal R3 training is for you, because R3 has arrived. And whilst most people know it's here, the real question is, do you know what it means practically for you? And what is the impact on your daily work, the impact on how you operate in clinical trials, and on the elements in your quality management system, including SOPs, to ensure that you're compliant with the R3 requirements? There is a lot of R3 training currently available at present online that simply regurgitates the R3 guideline, but it doesn't show you what to do with it, because R3 is a game changer. So at Sagittal, we've taken a different approach to R3 training. We've focused on what R3 means practically, with lots of examples of what is required and how to apply the requirements. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll give you a taster of the Sagittal R3 training, outline why R3 is a game changer, and give you a preview of how our Sagittal training helps you embed R3 into practice, with a sneak preview of one of the examples. So let's dive in. You may be wondering why I'm telling you that R3 is a game changer for clinical trials. Let me explain. Under R2, the focus was heavily weighted towards rigid compliance and exhaustive documentation, often leading to mountains of paperwork and a checkbox mentality. Quality management was predominantly reactive, meaning issues were detected and fixed after they occurred. R3 revolutionizes this approach by challenging us with a fundamental question at the planning stage and throughout the clinical trial. The new lens we look through, and therefore the question to be asked in R3 is, does this activity genuinely enhance quality and truly add value to participant protection and data reliability on a per protocol and a participant population basis? R3 isn't just a guideline update, it's a long-awaited mindset shift. R3 moves us from checklist thinking to critical thinking, from have we followed every step to are we focusing on what truly matters? It introduces a fit for purpose and risk proportionate philosophy that targets factors critical to trial quality, which are called critical to quality factors, and empowers teams to make evidence-based, proportionate, risk-informed decisions and at the clinical trial planning stage and throughout the clinical trial life cycle. So in summary, at the heart of R3 is the adoption of a proactive, risk-based quality management approach that anticipates and mitigates risks early. Instead of the R2 approach of waiting for issues to happen, then reacting by fixing the problem after it occurred, the R3 approach is to identify and control risks early, directing attention and resources to where they make the biggest difference. By shifting from a reactive, rigid framework to a preventive, adaptive mindset, R3 integrates quality seamlessly into the entire quality management system and the clinical trial lifecycle, fostering continuous improvement and shared ownership of quality. This shift empowers more efficient resource utilization, enhances participant protection, and enables data integrity. In essence, R3 dismantles the inflexible one-size-fits-all approach of R2 and replaces it with a living framework, one that supports innovation, decentralized trials, digital tools, and evolving science. Instead of asking, have we followed every step? And if not, then fix issues after they occur, R3 asks, are we thinking critically? And are we focusing on what truly matters to ensure quality on a per protocol and per population basis? Sagittal training on R3 equips you with the knowledge and understanding of how to practically apply the R3 requirements. Training is split into 2 modules, which can be taken to fit your availability. Module 1 provides the foundation for understanding the R3 guideline. This training covers the core concepts behind the R3 revision, its overall structure, and the R3 principles, which apply to all interventional clinical trials of investigational products. There are 11 core principles that underpin all GCP activities that must be followed for all interventional clinical trials, whether intended to be submitted to regulatory authorities or not. 2 of these 11 principles are new in R3, quality by design and proportionate risk, and all the principles have been reworded for clarity and modern relevance. The 2 new game-changing principles relate to designing quality into clinical trials from the outset and ensuring oversight of the clinical trial is proportionate to the risks, which represents a major shift from R2's more prescriptive approach. So Module 1 sets the foundation and the stage for understanding how the R3 guideline supports quality and flexibility, focusing on what truly matters, participant protection and data reliability across all types of clinical trials. Module 2 then shifts from principles to practice. This training focuses on R3's Annex 1 and its appendices, which provide the detailed operational guidance needed to implement the 11 GCP principles. Annex 1 applies to interventional clinical trials intended for regulatory submission. However, its guidance can be applied to other types of clinical trials not intended for submissions using a risk-based and proportionate approach. Annex 1 introduces updated expectations for IRBs, or ethics committees, investigators and sponsors, adds new content on data governance, and it expands guidance on oversight, responsibilities, and documentation. Annex 1 is really the practical engine of R3, and Module 2 is our Sagittal training brings this alive and equips you with the tools to apply the principles in real-world settings. Together, these 2 modules provide the what, the why, and the how of R3, and our training provides examples and interactive questions to consolidate your understanding of R3. Plus, there will be an opportunity to ask questions that you have if you choose to book our training with an in-person training. Understanding the guidance is one thing, applying it is another. To help join the dots and connect theory to practice, the Sagittal R3 training weaves clinical trial real-life examples into the learning tapestry. So let's look at one example as a taster to the Sagittal R3 training, a clinical trial conducted under E6 R2, and explore how applying R3 thinking would change the approach and outcome from a trial participant and data integrity perspective. So let's look at the example. In this clinical trial, there were 3 dosing arms. Participants were to be randomized to receive a low, a medium, or a high dose of the investigational product. The primary endpoint, the main measure of the trial's success, was directly linked to whether participants received the correct dose. So accuracy in dosing was absolutely critical to both participant protection and data validity. However, the dosing regime in this particular clinical trial was complex, involving weight-based adjustments, titrations, and specific timing requirements. Under R2, a formal risk assessment at the planning stage was not mandated. In this clinical trial, the complexity of the dosing was therefore not identified and considered as a critical risk, and therefore no additional controls were implemented to manage it. As a result, the trial experienced 300 dosing errors. Let's look at the impact. From a participant safety perspective, incorrect dosing led to underdosing, ineffective treatment, and overdosing, IP toxicity, or adverse events. Where high doses of the IP were given instead of a low dose, participants experienced side effects, some required hospitalization, or there were withdrawals from the study. Conversely, underdosing meant participants didn't receive therapeutic benefit, which ethically was problematic. From a data integrity perspective, because so many participants were incorrectly dosed, primary endpoint data became unreliable. The sponsor could not truly assess the drug's efficacy or safety because dosing errors confounded the results. Although R2 introduced risk-based monitoring, it didn't yet mandate proactive identification and management of critical to quality factors at the design stage. In this example, dosing accuracy was clearly critical to quality, but it wasn't identified early enough, leading to a preventable issue. In our Sagittal training in modules 1 and 2, the training would then invite the attendees for each of the examples to think about what would be done differently under R3. Learners are then guided to review the answer and reflect on how the principles from R3 training apply, thinking critically about how this same study would be planned and managed under R3. And this reflective step helps consolidate learning by linking theoretical concepts to real-world practice, reinforcing how R3's principles can be applied in day-to-day clinical trial activities. So the R3 solution in this example is as follows. R3 introduces a risk-based proportionate approach that begins at the design stage, focusing on identifying critical to quality factors that are essential for participant safety and reliable results. In this case, under R3, the project team thinks critically at the planning stages of the clinical trial. They recognise that this trial has 3 dosing arms, the primary endpoint is dependent on correct dosing, and the dosing regime is complex, which makes dosing accuracy critical. Under R3, the project team would perform a structured risk assessment during the protocol design phase. They would identify dosing accuracy as a critical to quality factor and a key risk that threatens this critical to quality factor, since any dosing error could impact both the participant safety and data integrity. In terms of practical application, the project team would put in place a proportionate risk management plan, sometimes called a risk log, with specific controls such as clear, simplified dosing instructions in the protocol and pharmacy manual, targeted training for investigators, site staff, and the CRA on dosing procedures, a second-person verification step before dosing, maybe increased monitoring over this particular point as well, and the use of electronic system alerts or calculation tools to support correct dose selection. Next, in terms of practical application, these measures would be documented, implemented, and monitored throughout the trial, so the risk is continually assessed. based on the data that is being received regarding dosing in the trial. So the risks outlined in the project risk management plan or risk log are continually reviewed and the mitigations monitored using the data throughout the life cycle of the clinical trial. The result, dosing errors are prevented, participants are protected from over or under dosing, and data integrity is maintained because the primary endpoint remains valid. This scenario illustrates the shift from reactive to proactive quality management in R3. Instead of discovering problems after they occur, then fixing them after they occur as an R2, risks are anticipated, mitigated, and proportionally managed from the start at the trial design stage and throughout the life cycle of the clinical trial. The outcome is a safer, more reliable trial, fully aligned with R3's 11 GCP principles, especially those relating to participant protection, quality by design, and risk proportionate approaches. The Sagittal R3 training provides many more examples with practical solutions on how to implement and manage the R3 requirements. So book now with Sagittal. Step into the new era of GCP with us and gain the confidence to apply ICH GCP E6 R3 with clarity and purpose across every clinical trial. Training is available now as pre-recorded sessions for modules 1 and 2 or bespoke courses tailored to your needs. Whichever mode you choose can be delivered online or in person. Now is a good time to book the training. R3 became effective on the 23rd of July 2025. UK legislation will be updated to comply with R3 with an updated UK clinical trials regulation and expected UK implementation by mid-2026. The FDA has issued a guidance on R3, which was published on the 9th of September 2025, and other countries will implement to reflect the guidance shortly also. Thank you for listening to this Sagittal Training Taster webinar on ICH GCP E6 R3. If you have any questions about booking the training, you can reach us on the Sagittal website. Thank you very much.